Welcome to Asking for a Trend. I'm Josh Lipton. For the next half hour, we are breaking down the trends of today and move stocks tomorrow. There's a lot to keep track of, so we're focusing on what you need to know to get ahead of the curve. Here's some of the trends we're going to be diving into. A mixed market day on Wall Street after fresh Trump trade news and after major AI chip makers get the green light to sell in China, and investors only like parts of what they saw, though. And tech strategies change at lightning speed. We're looking at how AI plays into Apple's big plans. The iPhone maker also making a play in rare earth metals. We'll take a deep dive into all of it. And our most important assets live in the cloud. What's being done to keep all of that valuable data safe? We're talking inventory of cybersecurity globally. Well, Nvidia and AMD saying on Tuesday that they are both resuming chip sales in China, and this is coming just days after Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang met with President Trump. For more, we're bringing in Ben Bajarin, CEO and principal analyst at Creative Strategies. Ben, great to see you, especially here on set. Let's start with that Nvidia and AMD news. You saw those headlines drop, Ben. Were you surprised by that? You saw that coming? What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised. I think we had heard a lot of chatter that both CEOs were working with the administration, trying to understand what it would need to take to overcome some of these regulatory barriers and have some products that they can now ship back into China. I think they've both been very, very vocal about how important that market is for them to the terms of their business. Jensen, in particular, talking about the hit that revenue that it would be. So I think we firmly believed, right, something would work itself out in some capacity. I think the details were just, you know, how scaled down do these chips need to be? That's sort of the architectural changes that needed to be made that got worked out, and I think now they've got a clear path as to what products, what architecture, and now let's hope it sticks, right? Let's hope that this isn't something that comes back in, 6 to 8 months and then gets the rug pulled out from that. This regulatory and this process is actually going to stick going forward.
How big is that China opportunity for Nvidia and AMD?
I mean, for Nvidia, it's been in the multiples of billions. I think Jensen has publicly said he thinks that's a $50 billion market. And I think, again, if you come from the perspective that he's been saying, and Lisa Su has been saying this too of AMD, I mean, everybody in semis has been saying that we're going to see a total refresh of infrastructure. That's trillions of dollars everywhere. Every country, right, needs to overturn their infrastructure in the age of AI, and China's not, separated from that. And so I think that's the opportunity, is that for them, you've got every cloud player there. You've got increasing, numbers of AI services in China that needs new infrastructure, and so that's a significant business. That's not 50 billion year one. That's growing over time, but that's the size of the infrastructure market, and I do think that could grow as well in China.
What does this news mean, Ben, for competition in China? Competition with the local teams, the Huawei's.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been long talked about what Huawei's doing, right, in terms of manufacturing there and bringing some SKUs. And there had been some chatter that it's competitive, but I think anybody really technical knew that it really wasn't going to be that competitive, and that you were hearing, the likes of Baidu and Tencent and others really still wanting what they could get from Nvidia, which is, again, it's not going to be the latest and greatest, that we have competitive globally, but it's still better, right? Largely better than a lot that's going on there, especially even from Huawei. So I think they'll still try. There'll still be some local competition, but I think by and large, this market opens up a lot of new opportunities for Nvidia and AMD.
What did you make of that argument? You would hear this, Ben, that the American export controls were in some way encouraging, motivating the Chinese companies to up their game?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been China for a long time, right? They've been trying to do more local silicon. They've been trying to do more manufacturing locally on leading edge process. I don't think it's been any secret that they wanted semiconductor or technology independence from the rest of the world. I think that's just also a lot harder than people make it out to be. Like, that's not an easy thing. There's a lot of IP that goes into that that's not owned by China. So I still think they'll still invest in that, right? They're not going to give up on that strategy. But I think as long as we, American companies or global companies, continue to compete and innovate, they're still going to have a role to play in China. And I think as long as the door stays open for them to do so with both administrations, and that's going to continue to mean a competitive business there, also for American companies.
When you think about Jensen Huang and Lisa Su, Ben, you think about obviously very, very well respected and talented executives. When you see headlines like this, what does it also tell you about their skills as diplomats, as folks who are really seem to be very clearly capable of working those halls of power?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is a really important point just about how important the CEO role is, right, in these organizations, to not just be operationally efficient or visionary or strategic for their company, but to be able to play those, roles that they need to do in democratic ways, right? And I still think when you think about like who's best positioned to run a company, or whether, somebody should be in or out, like that's got to play a role. Your ability to manage that business with a very diplomatic way. And I think that's been something that every major big tech CEO has had to do. And I think they're doing it really, really well, navigating what is a really challenging time, right, in terms of both regulations, tariffs, and the policies that they want that needs to be pro-business or pro for their company.
Let's talk about another tech executive well known as being an executive and a diplomat. That would be Tim Cook, his company. Apple's saying it's going to invest $500 million into MP Materials. As a longtime Apple watcher, you saw that and thought what?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? Apple has taken every opportunity through the history of this company, dating back to even the iPod, where they've bought storage and memory up in bulk, again, because prices of those things can fluctuate. So I think anytime that you can come in and buy in bulk, something that gives you a fixed price, that you can control that pricing for yourselves going forward, they're going to make that investment every time, right? And in this term, right, whatever rare earths they need in order to manufacture, right, whether that's parts of product or batteries or whatever that is, those are the things that they'll secure up if they can, and it makes a lot of sense because, again, in supply chain management and being able to keep costs down, that's a very strategic move.
Let's stick with Cook. You saw how there was an analyst, made some waves, put out a note, provocative, asked, listen, maybe it's time for a change in the C-suite. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sentiment is really just coming from, wanting to see more modern leaders or people who are coming up through the ranks that haven't been there or might bring a fresh take to the business. And I think, again, right, the reality is if there was somebody better, like if Tim Cook or others thought that there was somebody better within Apple to run and move this company forward, I think they would make that change. Like, I don't think this is a matter of pride or stubbornness. I think he's still the right guy. The investors believe he's the right guy. The board believes the right guy. And in fact, I believe a lot of the executives believe that he's the right guy. And so I think that's a key part of them keeping him in position. But now this, again, comes back to a new era of execution, which, again, he is now overseeing more of those businesses.
Yeah, and Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, I saw reported, Cook is staying put. On the question of Apple and AI, Ben, there are investors who are disappointed with where they're at. You can see that in the stock and how it's reacted so far this year. We're down about nearly 20%. What do you make of that? How do you think about Apple's role in this AI market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best ways to just understand, I think, where we're going here is more not in one technology or one winner is going to win everything here. I think people like to bucket OpenAI or Google or others and say, like, these are the ones that are going to win. Like, this isn't a winner-take-all market, right? And that's in today's era of just querying, right, ChatGPT or Gemini to do some search. We're moving to an era which is far more agentic, right? Which means that you're going to have an agent. That agent is going to work on your behalf, and it's going to understand, you, Josh, your preferences, your likes, where you're at in the world, your location, like intimate levels of details of you, and then go work with other agents, Google's agents, Amazon agents, Meta's agent, et cetera. So you'll have this one thing, and all those agents will have domain expertise. And I think that's Apple's goal, is to have domain expertise, again, on the customer, on their ecosystem. And that's something that they can easily do, right? They don't need to boil the ocean. They can partner with OpenAI or Gemini if you just want to search the internet. But the key is having a smart, intelligent, and intimate agent that knows you, that can go and work on your behalf for actions, do predictive things, do things on your behalf. And I think that's their broader strategy. And it's just doing what they can do well, which is create a much more agent or much more friendly customer experience when it comes to AI.
And can they get this done in-house in Cupertino, Ben? And I ask you because I've had analysts come on the show and tell me it is time for Apple to bring out the checkbook. They're going to have to make a big deal, a big AI deal. I had one analyst tell me it should be Perplexity.
Yeah.
That would, historically Apple does deals, but they're smaller. I think
Right.
the biggest one that was biggest ever was Beats for $3 billion.
Right.
What do you make of that line of questioning?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's two things, right? Apple always doesn't just look at technology, they look at culture. Is this a cultural fit? So that's also a question you've got to ask, is who could they buy that fits in to the broader culture of Apple? But I think, again, I like Perplexity. I use Perplexity. They're a little bit of a different company. You still need a big foundational model, even if you're using Perplexity. So that doesn't entirely solve Apple's problem. I think there's actually some smaller acquisitions that can be made. You pointed out Mark Gurman actually said that Mistral was being looked at, which is a large foundational model. I think that would make a ton of sense. And there really are a lot of startups coming out of the Valley doing really interesting things. And there's some of those teams and those individuals and their technology might be a better fit for Apple. But again, I think they don't necessarily need this big world internet foundational model. I think if they've got this agent that's got domain expertise and that's about their ecosystem, their software, you, the customer, and your preferences, and that agent can go work with other agents, which is how the world we're moving to in agentic AI, I think they have everything they need to do on that vision. The question is, do they want to do more than that?
One last question, Ben. I know investors are excited about AI and the street is excited. How excited are consumers about AI and AI features? I ask because I know you survey consumers. I mean, is that top of mind if I'm thinking about shopping around for a new phone? Is it the AI features, or no, is it about the processor and the battery? Is it some combination?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be all about the features, right? And I think, again, at the end of the day, we should just think about AI as software. It's a software feature. These are features that add value to your life, that you can either search the internet, do queries, summary reports, do writing, whatever it is, right? Or an agent, right? Go book travel on your behalf or find products on your behalf and do that work for you. Having those tools built into our operating system and our apps, I think it's the feature set of value that people will get excited about. How we make money on this, and that's what we're going to see right over the next couple of years of what consumers pay for if it's advertising. But I think these features add a ton of functionality and usefulness. They're going to save people time and make them be more productive. And at the end of the day, I think that's what they're going to like. But they're not going to think of it as I've got an AI. It's these are just great software features that make my life better.
Ben, great to see you, as always.
Yeah,
Thank
likewise.
you, sir.
Thanks for having me here.
Stocks closing mixed as the Dow slides after CPI inflation accelerates. Meanwhile, Nvidia's surge lifts the NASDAQ to a record. Yahoo Finance's Jared Blickery joins us now with the trading day takeaways. Jared.
Takeaway number one, bonds scared stocks today, and I'm going to jump right to the 30-year because it is above 5%. This is a level that has been scaring stocks off and on for over a few years here. And let's take a look at the chart here. You can see it closed the day up 5 basis points to 5.02%. Here's a 2-year chart, and every time it is poked above 5%, and it's done so a few times in recent history here, as recently as just a couple months ago, post-Liberation Day, during that rally, guess what? Stocks rolled over a bit. So stocks don't like this, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the days and weeks to come, maybe the minutes to come as well. But the bottom line is, off of that CPI report today, which was not as bad as feared, we were expecting a jump in the monthly numbers of 0.3%. We got that number for the headline. We actually came short of it, so it was better than anticipated for the core number. That takes out food and energy. You put it all together, stocks actually rose this was a pre-market, so the stock futures rose on that report. But as soon as the market opened, we had bond yields climbing, and that just kind of tipped everything to the south side. So that's my number one takeaway right here.
But there was some green today, was there not?
Yes, there was, and you can thank Nvidia, you can thank the chips, you can thank tech, you can thank the NASDAQ for that. And let's take a look at the NASDAQ 100, because that kind of shows you what's happening today. And let's see if we dial that up right here. These are the sector action. By the way, I said tech was the only sector in the green, up 0.9%. And here's the NASDAQ 100. In the upper left corner there is Nvidia. You want to hit that for me? 4.04%. Here is the price action. So this is a record high. I'll show you the last 6 years so you can see how far it's come, up 4,000%. That is a nice chart right there. Very volatile stock, but the AI leader clearly still in control of the rally. But this is almost a defensive trade. Look at all the green on here. Most of that is in the chip space, some of these outsized winners, and this is where you really saw the concentration of winners today. Not even the smaller chips, a lot of red here, but it's the larger ones. And so this is a contrast from what we saw in the prior days. As we were talking about yesterday, I was out 3 weeks, but small caps were doing well, especially yesterday when I came back, and also meme stocks and crypto. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So things were looking good, but then we had this party interrupted by yields, and so that's still my biggest concern right here.
You mentioned crypto. What are we seeing?
You bet. So let's take a look at that, because crypto, mainly Bitcoin, slumped. Now, not everything was looking red today in crypto, and I'm going to show you the heat map for that in a second here. Here we go. Ethereum was up 1.32%. We have had incredible price action, not only price action, but flows into Ethereum ETFs. But let's focus on Bitcoin here. It's down 3% over the last 24 hours. And I'll show you a year-to-date chart here so I can do some voodoo technical analysis on it. And here is the most recent jump to record highs. Now, we had a consolidation here over several months. It was a healthy consolidation. There were some fake outs to the upside and to the downside. That's what Bitcoin does. But I think what traders are asking themselves right now, because is this another fake out? Was this break to new highs another fake out when all the way to 123,000 came down to about 116? So that's $7,000, which is nothing to sneeze at here. That's about 6% in Bitcoin. I looked over the prior 6 years of history, not necessarily on the screen, but on my charting platform on Yahoo Finance, and I found that when Bitcoin does break to new highs, and it does so convincingly, you typically don't have these big slumps, like 6% in one day. That typically doesn't happen. So this might be an outlier. I'm not too concerned about the rally unless we take out to the downside those prior highs, 111, 112,000. If we break that, then I start getting concerned about this being a false breakout. But here's the good news, and here's what I was talking about yesterday. Here is a 10-day look. I'm going to sort by performance here. You can still see there's a lot of gains to be had here. XLM up 77.8%, Algo up nearly 60%, Ripple up 27%, Cardano 24%, Ethereum holding on to gains of 19%. So things, the breadth in the crypto market looking pretty good here. One day does not a trend make, but it has my attention.
Bottom line, let's get down to this. The big theme for Jared Blickery in today's trade.
Bond market is leading. Bond investors are scared. The one good spot today, the US dollar was up as well. So this is the opposite of what we saw a few months ago in Liberation Day. The dollar was tanking as yields were going up. Well, that's not what happened today. So again, one day does not a trend make, but has my attention.
All right, thank you, sir.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Well, the most valuable currencies to corporations may be data and cloud computing, but how safe are those assets? We're joined by Nick Schneider. He's CEO and president of security operations firm Arctic Wolf. It currently has a valuation of more than $4.4 billion. Nick, welcome to the show. Great to see you in person, by the way.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Nick, let me start high level, because you have good line of sight here. There are concerns about a slowing economy. We've got tariff uncertainty. So start off kind of big picture. What does spending on security look like, right, against this backdrop and in this environment, Nick?
Yeah, I still think demand in cybersecurity is pretty high, right? So despite what's kind of happening in a macroeconomic context, there's still a lot of activity with bad actors. As a matter of fact, it's up quite a bit year over year. So for businesses, despite what's kind of happening within their own ecosystem or the world, they have to still be conscious of what's happening or the opportunities that the bad actors might use in that kind of chaos to take advantage of the cybersecurity posture that these companies have. So we've seen actually elevated demand, and I think demand in cybersecurity will remain pretty elevated for the foreseeable future.
Let's talk about AI, a trend investors are very excited about. How is your company leveraging that tech?
Yeah, so there's two primary ways. First of all, AI has been used in cybersecurity for a long time. There's two primary ways. You can use it kind of in the back end or in the core of the platform to be able to make sense of all the data that you're ingesting. So for example, our business is ingesting now somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 trillion security events a week. But our average customer is only really actioning, call it 2 to 3 of those alerts per week. And really the magic between those two numbers is all through automation and AI. Now that's not really customer facing, that's a lot of what's happening in the back end. The second way to leverage it is through LLMs or engagement with the end user themselves. So like, for example, we have a product called Cypher, it's an AI assistant. And effectively what that allows end customers to do is understand the data that they're getting through the platform to be able to take action within their environment or do something within their business.
And we talked about how you're using AI. How are the bad guys using it?
Yeah, the easiest one to really wrap your head around is through phishing campaigns, right? So it used to be a world where a phishing campaign was actually pretty easy to point out if you were an individual and you were paying attention. Now they've gotten pretty sophisticated, right? So the emails are written really well. They use logos that are really well depicted. The headers that they leverage for the emails that they send are really hard to decipher, like a 1 versus an I, for example. So they've gotten really sophisticated with leveraging AI, and then also leveraging then AI in a bulk fashion to do that to thousands of people at once, as opposed to trying to kind of do it in a piecemeal fashion.
When you talk about bad guys, Nick, who are we talking about in broad strokes?
Yeah, I got this question today too. So bad actors in general, generally speaking, they're in groups of bad actors, and I think that's where we see the majority of the activity. So those can be actually organizations in certain countries, or individuals now with the advent of AI can do this from their home. But then you also see in certain industries concern over nation states, right? So if you're in critical infrastructure, anything that might be critical to a country or an organization that would be interesting to a nation state, you'll see some nation state activity as well.
If I met you, Nick, at a barbecue and I heard what you do for a living, I think one of my first questions would be, how do I protect myself? Now, granted, what you all do is very sophisticated, but I would imagine you must get that question from folks. I mean, are there basic tips and tricks? And that might sound very simple and common sense to you, that you tell people, hey, you should keep these lessons in mind.
Yeah, the most fundamental is to stick to the fundamentals. So
and what are the fundamentals?
So for an individual, passwords, using password managers, making sure that you're not using the same thing over and over, especially for critical assets, your bank accounts, your insurance accounts, things that you really would not want a bad actor to get into. And the same kind of principle applies to businesses as well. Like, how can you simplify your overall security operation and make it applicable to your business in a way that's not so complicated that you actually lose some insights as a result of the complication?
I have to ask you guys have been around for some time, of course. We do see, and we talk about this a lot in this, Nick, the IPO market picking up here, showing some life. Any interest yourself in kind of testing the markets there?
Yeah, so I mean, we're of the size and have kind of a business profile that I think would be very interesting to the public markets. We're in an interesting time in cybersecurity in that there's a lot of consolidation and platformization around what had historically been a lot of different tools into more centralized platforms. And I think Arctic Wolf can play in that story actually quite well. So we're being really smart about strategically where we can make those choices as a private firm and then enter the public markets kind of as the markets are ready for us, but also as we've gotten through some of our strategic initiatives. But it's certainly on our roadmap and certainly something that we'll take serious interest in here over the next, not too distant future.
Nick, great to see you and to have you on set.
Yeah, great to see you.
And that is a wrap on today's Ask for a Trend. Be sure to come back tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern for all of the latest market room stories affecting your wallet.